Gentlemen.
All right, good evening, everyone. Looks like we have enough people to start. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the Peninsula Clean Energy Board meeting for Thursday, September 22nd. So we'll start with the roll call.
All right.
You guys do to all the guys.
I know. Thank God they put you over here. I've been having to
I'm
sit
not
over
afraid.
Okay. Is this where? Oh, there we go. All right. If you will please answer when I say your jurisdiction. County of San Mateo.
Dave Pine.
County of San Mateo.
And Carol Groom will be here shortly.
Okay. Town of Atherton.
Rick DeGolia.
City of Belmont. No. City of Brisbane.
Lori Lou,
Thank you. City of Burlingame.
Donna Colson,
Town of Colma. City of Daly City. City of East Palo Alto.
Larry Moody.
City of Foster City.
Catherine Mahampour for Gary Pollard.
City of Half Moon Bay.
Deborah Penrose.
Town of Hillsborough.
Lawrence May.
City of Menlo Park. City of Millbrae.
Wayne Lee.
City of Pacifica.
John Keener.
Town of Portola Valley.
Jeff Elfs.
City of Redwood City.
Ian Bain.
City of San Bruno.
Marty Bedina.
City of San Carlos.
Cameron Johnson.
City of San Mateo.
Rick Bonilla.
City of South San Francisco.
Rajiv Gupta.
Town of Woodside.
Okay, we have a quorum. So this is an opportunity to take public comment. If there's anyone who's joining us tonight who'd like to speak on an item that's not on the agenda. I don't have any speaker cards, but happy to take any public comment. Okay, seeing none, then let's move on to set the agenda and approve the consent items. That's for number 3. Yep. So we could get a motion to do set the agenda and approve the. Who is that?
Wayne.
Okay.
Second.
Moved by Wayne Lee and seconded by Ian Bain. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Okay, so let's start just a brief chair report. First, as I'm sure everyone's aware, we're just over 10 days until we launch. So we're hoping the lights are going to stay on October 3rd. Highly confident of that. So we're very close to having customers and be delivering energy. Wanted to give shout outs to 2 of our cities. The town of Atherton voted last night to go 100% green with their municipal accounts. So thank you, Rick DeGolia, for spearheading that. And also the city of Foster City, I understand, also has joined the 100% club. So I think later, we'll give a little round of applause for that. And we have probably have an update later in your report. We have it up here now. So let's get the list as long as we can. Also, I just wanted to remind people that we're going to move to a monthly board meeting schedule now. Now that we have launched, I really appreciate everyone's efforts to be here so frequently over the last 6 months. So the standing meeting will be the 4th Thursday. So you can lock that into your calendars. But again, really appreciate the extra efforts everyone made to do the twice-a-month meetings. And then finally, I wanted to mention that we are hoping to convene a retreat on either the 12th of November or the 19th of November. Those are Saturdays, for a couple hours in the morning. Because at this point, one thing we've committed to do is to develop our mission statement and our kind of top line goals. And also now that we'll be launched shortly, it would be a good time to just step back and start to think about our strategic objectives going forward. So we will put out a doodle poll to people and see which of those dates would work best. I know, Jeff, you want to add anything about the retreat, or I think it's, again, be a good opportunity just to think a little bigger, take a little bigger picture perspective and work on our mission statement.
So, Chair, what are the proposed dates?
The November 12th and November 19th. All right, well, with that, then I'll turn over to...
Do you have a location, or are you looking for one?
We do not have a location, so if you have good ideas, let us know. All right, turn over to Jan.
Thank you. Okay. So, first of all, I would like to welcome our new hires. You see some new people sitting here tonight. And so I'd like to welcome all of our new hires and have each of them give a couple-minute description on who they are. We're leaving the nest and starting out on our own as a real agency. So now we have a staff essentially of 5 or 4.5. And so let's go in alphabetical order, and we'll start here with Ann Bartoletti, who is our new board clerk and the executive assistant to the CEO.
Hello, I'm Ann Bartoletti, and I come to PCE from a previous background in customer service, consumer protection. I was in the telecom industry back when divestiture took place, and we got competition for telecommunications. And more recently, I've also worked with many organizations as secretary and chair, taking minutes and producing documents. And most recently, I was working in the Institute on Aging in San Francisco, managing their suicide prevention hotline. So with a varied background, I'm very, very excited to be here and see what this county is doing and all the cities here with clean energy.
Welcome.
Welcome.
And next is Dan Lieberman, our Director of Marketing and Public Affairs.
Hi, I'm Dan Lieberman, and very excited to join PCE. I've been working in renewables for about 18 years, most recently in marketing at SunEdison, which is headquartered in Belmont, not far from where we are right now. Previous to that, I worked for 7 years for a company in San Francisco called 3 Degrees, running green power programs for a number of electric utility clients, including several municipal utilities around the Bay Area, Silicon Valley Power, Palo Alto Utilities, Roseville Electric, and Alameda. And before that, I ran the Greenie certification program for voluntary renewable energy. So sort of a cross-section of different roles in marketing and markets around renewables. So looking forward to applying some of that to our 2 renewable energy products that we have through PCE.
So we're really excited to have Dan here. He's got great background, and 30 seconds after arriving, he knew exactly what he needed to do. So that's exactly what we needed. And we're also very excited to have Ann. She's got a load of energy, a very positive attitude, and she's lots of fun to work with. And our other extremely qualified person is George Wiltsey, our Director of Power Resources and Energy Programs.
Thank you, Jan. And I'm George. I have, I guess I'll just say, many years of experience in the energy industry. It's been a great fun for me over the years. And most recently, I've been at Southern California Edison for the last 9 years. Managing energy procurements, particularly renewable energy, which is quite similar to my responsibilities here at PCE. I'll be building up and managing the portfolio of projects and supplies of energy that we'll be supplying to our customers. So it's going to be a fun job. I'm very excited. We've been together, 2 weeks now? And it feels like we're all engaged and rowing in the same direction. So, thank you.
And last but not least, we have Neerit Erickson, who is a deputy county counsel who has been assigned to PCE. And Neerit, tell us about yourself.
Thanks, Jan. Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. I'll give you kind of the brief history of myself in reverse chronological order. I've been at the county now at the Office of County Counsel for just over 3 years. And it's, been great. I've been able to work with a variety of clients, from the county hospital to the Parks Department to a JPA called CCAG that many of you are familiar with, and now Peninsula Clean Energy. And prior to that, I was a litigation associate with Latham & Watkins for 5 years, mostly practicing antitrust and securities law. Before that, I clerked at the 7th Circuit in Chicago, and that was right after attending law school at UC Berkeley. And before that, I got a PhD in math, also from UC Berkeley.
Go Bears.
Thank you.
So we know who to go to if we need some spreadsheet work done. Although probably not at her rate. So we're really excited to have Neerit here. So we have David and Neerit now, and a lot of support from the county. So we thank you very much for that. So you'll be hearing more from all of these people every month. So now I'd like to say thank you to the Office of Sustainability team. They did a great job laying the groundwork for the launch of PCE, and you all have been working with them for the last year and a half, really, and they're fantastic, talented, smart, hardworking group of people. But they're all kind of moving on to their next areas. So first, I'll just go down the list, and I know Jim is going to say more. But first, Jim Egermeyer, as you know, who's the director of the Office of Sustainability, just a great guy and puts together a great team. Kirsten Pringle, who's been leading our outreach work. She's actually leaving the area and moving up to Sacramento. Can you believe that? She's joining a consulting firm called MWH Global, and she'll be doing a lot of work in the water area. She'll be coming by later this evening. I think she's making a presentation right now on behalf of PCE, and she'll come by when she's done with that. Carolyn Rader, of course you know, who's been serving as our board clerk and program manager, has accepted a job within the Office of Sustainability in the Climate Adaptation Group, so she'll be staying as part of Jim's team. And Gordon Tong, who isn't here tonight, has been promoted to the manager of the Waste Reduction Group in the Office of Sustainability. So as you know, they're all great, talented group of people, and we wish them all well in their new roles. And of course, if any of you decide you don't like where you are, come knock on our door, because we'll gladly take you all back.
Jan, before you go on, I think
Jim
Egermeyer may want to make a comment.
So, good evening, supervisors, city council members, and members of the public and the PCE team. Tonight, I just wanted to take a few minutes to recognize the team from the Office of Sustainability as we transition assistance in your endeavors from our office to the new PCE staff Jan has been hiring during the last 2 months. This marks the beginning of some and the end for others. So I want to give you a little bit of background, a story I really enjoy telling. It goes back 2 years ago, and I still remember this day, and that's when Supervisor Pine came in to visit me in the new Office of Sustainability at the county. And we had just hired Gordon and Kirsten, so this is about 2 years ago, almost to the day. They started just the day after Labor Day, and in turn we started this journey for all of us, and to share this with all of you. And so it's been a really good feeling for all of us, and it was part of this startup aspect of really, what I refer to as kind of this little lean team, and that we really felt like we could do anything. And so it was great to be part of that. So we put in long hours, long days, long weeks to meet all of our deadlines. And we told ourselves that we are not going to let this idea fail, not on our watch. So we hired the best and the brightest consultants, adding Sean and Seth, John, Kirby, Brian,
Ray and her team from Circle Point. We added Carolyn, Danielle, Mike, and David from the Office of Sustainability. Added the Nobel's team, and then Jan. And don't let me forget David Silverman, and most recently Narrett from County Council. So now Jan has added Ann, Dan, and George. And we too are changing here in the Office of Sustainability. As Jan mentioned, Gordon has been promoted to a manager for our waste reduction program. Carolyn has been promoted from an extra help position working full-time on PCE to a permanent position in the Climate Change and Adaptation Program. And sadly, we share with you that Kirsten is leaving the county for greener pastures. So she has this new job located up in Sacramento, and which in turn will allow her to be closer to her boyfriend. So from all of us in the Office of Sustainability, it's been an honor to assist you, see you grow, and find the answers to the hard questions we've come to know and expect from you. Keep asking the hard questions, strive to be the best, the greenest, and the cleanest for all of the county's residents and businesses. What I've enjoyed during this time together most is the success we've shared together as a team in a very short time frame. Thank you for the time together for me and staff of the Office of Sustainability.
Dave?
Yes, of course.
I'd just like to extend my really heartfelt thanks for the team that got us started and put us on the right track. And now we're going to continue on that track to greater success. But if it was not for the initial team, we wouldn't be here today. So thank you very, very much.
I'd like to add my personal thanks to Jim Eggermeyer and Kirsten and Carolyn and Gordon. You guys just did remarkable work. You know, the Office of Sustainability, you know, it wasn't the Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy, it was the Office of Sustainability. But you went ahead and embraced it wholeheartedly. And, you know, the launch of any endeavor is just such a critical period. You know, if the rocket isn't going up straight, you're in trouble. And you helped us, you know, launch that rocket perfectly. And it was an incredibly exciting environment where you made things happen, whatever the challenge that faced the team. We're really going to miss working with you day in and day out. You know, I too will have very fond memories of this period, and you know, very personally indebted to you and the team. So thank you. Okay.
And thank you for letting us camp out in your offices. We're going to stay as long as we can, actually.
You're welcome.
And it is almost camping out. But it's great. And there are other people, of course, from the team, the finance group, Danielle and Michael, who helped us a lot. I didn't say goodbye to them yet because we're still utilizing their talents. And when we were working on that Barclays loan, we would have these calls, you know, 24/7, and Danielle and Michael were there at all hours of the night, and we got that done, as you remember. So it's really great working here with this San Mateo County, because this has got to be the most collaborative county that there is, and I think you all should be very proud of having worked together so well. I don't think any of the other CCAs have been as collaborative as this group, where you had everyone at the table from the very beginning, and I think that speaks really well, and that's why we're going to be really successful. And that's why our opt-outs are so low, as you'll hear about a little bit later. So, we're launching on October 3rd. So the first customers are going to be enrolled with PCE on October 3rd. We're in the process now. PG&E is switching their lists over and checking off all the customers who will now be PCE customers instead of PG&E customers. And we're planning a press conference at County Center on Wednesday, October 5th at 11 o'clock. And we will get more information to you about that in the coming week as that comes together. I wanted to talk a little bit about resource procurement. Having brought George on just 2.5 weeks ago, he's going to be issuing an RFP in just a couple of weeks. That's why we hired him, because he knows how to do this, and to get this out the door quickly, we want to take advantage of the great prices that are in the market right now. So I just wanted to review for you kind of the time frame for this and what you'll be seeing coming here to you. The RFP will be issued the week of October 3rd. We're asking that power producers submit their offers to us by the end of October. We will give you an update at the November board meeting on the progress of that RFO, how many people bid and what things are looking like. We'll finish up our initial selection of the suppliers late in November, and then come back to you at the December board meeting to ask for your approval of the selected suppliers. And assuming you agree with what we recommend, we will execute the PPAs at the end of December. And this is to get our load together for phase 2, which is a lot of power that we need to be providing for all the rest of our customers, and also the power that we'll need as our shorter term contract with Direct Energy falls off over the coming years. On the finance and banking side, we've been relying on the county to handle our banking up till now, and hopefully next week we'll put the wheels in motion to set up our own account. And we're having, revenues will start flowing into us in November, so we want to have a place for that money to go. And we're also planning to contract with a company called Maher Accountancy to provide support in setting up our accounting and financial systems, including the appropriate segregation of duties and supervisory review for a public agency. They're familiar with CCAs, and they've been performing these functions for MCE and Sonoma Clean Power. So they know exactly what we need. They know how we work, and they'll be able to quickly put something together for us. They'll be configuring the general ledger software for financial reporting, budget compliance, and contract financial management. And then they'll provide ongoing operational assistance with maintaining the general ledger, managing the accounts payable, developing financial statements, filing compliance reports, paying the taxes that we need to pay, and assisting with the treasury function. So next month, I expect we will come back to you with additional recommendations as to how we will work with the PCE treasurer. And the treasurer for PCE is the treasurer of the county. So we'll be talking about that and working on that a lot in the next month. We've been spending a little bit of money. So now that we have new employees, we have to provide them with computers, so we're working on that. We're getting a secure account at Box for our PCE electronic files. We have a lot of confidential customer information that we want to have very secure, and have only certain computers that are encrypted be able to access that customer data. So we're in the process of getting that all set up. We have an IT consultant to help us set up the IT in the new space that we moved to. We've been making interest payments to Barclays. We've been printing postage and sending out enrollment notices, as you know. And we'll talk a little bit more about resource adequacy later on tonight. I wanted to talk to you about CalCCA, the California Community Choice Association. This is the new 501c6 organization that has been formed to represent the CCA community. The website is cal.cca.org. And the key objectives of this organization are to advocate for the CCA community in the legislature and in the regulatory arenas, and make sure that they don't forget about us, and that the policies and legislation that goes through does not hurt us. And they also will be kind of an educational source for information on California CCAs and help other CCAs that are starting to form. So we are one of the founding members, and we're on the board of the CalCCA along with MCE, Sonoma, Lancaster, and Clean Power SF. And the cost to be a member is $15,000 for this year. It will go up as our revenues go up. And there is a CCA Policy Summit that is taking place on October 20th in San Francisco. And I think did I send an email to all you about that? If not, we'll make sure you get the information about that. It'll be a great place to meet people from the other CCAs and to get up to date on what's going on in the legislative and regulatory arena, which is one of the areas that where we face some risk. And so if we can all work together and be a strong advocate for the CCA community, we can make sure that things go our way. As Supervisor Pine said, we will transition to one meeting per month on the fourth Thursday of the month, starting next month. And then we will do a doodle poll with you to check on November 12th and 19th as to which date is the best for you for our board retreat, where we will focus on developing the mission statement and discuss the long-term strategies. One of the other things I wanted to talk about was, which I don't have a slide for, is there was a request at the last meeting asking if PCE would pay the cost for all cities to opt up to 100% renewable for 1 year. I think that came from San Bruno. And I sent out an email this week with the cost. It looked like it would be about $600,000 if the calculations are correct for PCE to do that. So anyway, it's not agendized tonight, but at the end of the meeting, if you decide you want to agendize that, let us know, and we can talk about that more next month. So if you have any questions, be happy to answer them. Yes.
Just a question on October 3rd, the starting date for PCEA. I did went to the website about a month ago, and I also early adapter button, I did that, and I also opt up. But I have not received any confirmation or any email, nothing, no confirmation. Am I missing something, or it is part of the process?
It's part of the process. Actually, the way it's set up is you have to affirmatively ask for a written confirmation. Otherwise, when you sign up, it says that you'll get, a screen pops up and says that you have opted up. So you should have seen that. But we can send you a hard copy if you'd like. Yes? Do you like that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I followed up directly, Pradeep, with our, I think we spoke about this last time, and I confirmed a couple of days ago as well, and they said that you're definitely 100, you're in. I think they sent you another email. I'll make sure they get you a follow-up email.
But Jen, you don't have to send a hard copy.
Okay. Okay. So depending on when your meter read date is, you may not be rolled over on October 3rd. It'll be sometime between October 3rd and October 31st, depending on when your meter is actually read. Wayne.
I don't know if you're familiar with the League of Cities. We have an annual conference about end of September, beginning of October. Probably too late for this year. Might try anyway, but it'd be great if we get CalCC to either sponsor or have a booth there. Try to create more partnership and interest in the state, which leverage us for our benefit.
That's a good. I think it's too late for this year because we're just kind of forming right now. But that's a good idea for next year. I'll pass it on.
I know I'll forget to say something next year, so I'll say it this year.
And there's also a site that tracks the CCA developments across the state, and I believe it's the Clean Energy Exchange. Maybe we could send that around to people because it's really quite informative. They have an interactive map, so you can go county by county to see where things are, and they also collect all the news stories from around the state pertaining to community choice energy. So why don't we'll send that around.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. So the next item on our agenda is resource adequacy. Oh, do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, we'll move right into that.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a topic we want to take a little time providing the board with some background about, and then move to two specific proposed transactions.
Right. So what we're going to do is provide a little overview of resource adequacy. We had an overview on this a few months ago, but actually we met all day today with our ESP supplier, Direct Energy, and since they're here, and since we are buying some of our resource adequacy from them, we asked if they could give a primer to you on resource adequacy. So if the two of you could come up and introduce yourselves so so that everyone knows who you are.
Good evening, I'm Jay Robertson with Direct Energy, and I am the Direct Energy lead for our CCA business in California. I manage all the day-to-day activities related to CCA.
Scott Adair with Direct Energy. So I head up Direct Energy's Canada and U.S. wholesale power optimization business, which is a small entity.
Okay, sorry, I'm not used to speaking in mic. I just turn that off? So I've been asked to say a few words about resource adequacy, which is otherwise known as capacity. So resource adequacy is a compliance requirement in California for load-serving entities, basically to purchase resource adequacy from generators. I guess generators selling resource adequacy have a requirement to offer energy into the market. So I mean, that's basically what they're agreeing to do when they sell it. It's needed to ensure that there's enough generation capacity in the market so that the CAISO can meet its operational needs and maintain grid reliability. And it basically provides a generation reserve so that there's enough electricity available during times of extreme demand. So if you think about it in the summertime, you got your peak hour, well, there has to be generation to cover that peak hour, and that generation typically doesn't operate for the rest of the year. It's there basically to ensure that there aren't any blackouts during August when demand is very high. It also provides an incentive for construction of new generation in areas that there's constraints, so what they call local RA areas. And it's also to provide fast response flexible generation. So where we're building out renewables to get to 50% by 2030. There's a flexible RA requirement, basically primarily gas generation that is there to support renewables. So with resource adequacy, there are 3 different types of RA. There's system RA, and that's for generation located anywhere in the CAISO, separated to north system and south system. There's local resource adequacy, and that's for generation that's located within those constrained local areas. And then there's the flexible resource adequacy, which is a subset of the other 2, and that's for specific kinds of generation that can meet basically dispatchable and ramp up and down quickly within a 3-hour period. That's something that was recently introduced to support the renewables build-out.
May I ask a question before?
Sure.
So are all those 3 buckets of resource adequacy, they're all applicable to Peninsula Clean Energy? Like
yes.
Particularly the local one?
Yeah. So, I mean, the way that it works is that all of the load within PG&E's territory has the same resource adequacy obligation. So even if you don't have, or you're not located in one of those local areas, you still have a percentage of your RA that has to be local. So it's all the same. That's just the way that the program's been designed. So if you're located in PG&E's territory, as I said, you have system obligations. You also have local areas, so they call it Greater Bay, Bay Area, and then PG&E Other is the other local area, and that's an amalgamation of a bunch of smaller areas, and those are 2 classes of RA. The obligation is set as 115% of your peak monthly load. For the local RA, it's based on just your August peak, and then month to month, you have your peaks where you buy system for 115% of the monthly peak. It's bilaterally traded, so there's not a very liquid, transparent market. You have to call around and talk to all the generators and ask for pricing. And potentially there may be developments where we go to a multi-year RA requirement where there's a centralized market that's more transparent. So there's a few things that could happen. So as I said, it's a compliance requirement. So there's Excel-based compliance filings that get submitted. There's a year-ahead submission requirement. So you purchase all of your local requirement on a year-ahead basis for the filing due by October 31st for the next calendar year. And then for the system, you have to purchase a percentage of it year ahead. So it's 90% of your May to September requirements. And then on a monthly basis going forward, every month, 45 days before that calendar month, you actually have to top up your system to 100% of your requirement. Any questions on that? Does it make sense?
I've got a question here.
Can you go back to the last slide?
Yep.
So 90% flexible and 90% system. So you have 90%, you have to procure 90% of?
That's on the year ahead basis, so that's for the October 31st deadline.
And the
for next year.
flexible, that goes towards the capacity?
Yes, so the flexible is a subset, so you could have a local RA resource that can also sell flexible. So if you buy the local, you can get the flexible attribute included, and so you just have to have a percentage of your local and system being flexible.
And you're not buying energy.
No, it's and this is sort of the obscure or sort of, you're buying, you're paying generation to ensure that generation is available when you need it. So a generator that sells RA has agreed that they'll provide offers for energy into the market. So the CAISO expects that every generator that's sold RA shows up with an offer for all hours, right? And it's there as a reliability product to ensure that the generation is available when it's called on. Sir?
Yeah. What are the performance and cost criteria that would allow replacing gas RA with batteries?
That's a heavy question. I mean, batteries, like right now, there's some adjustments for demand response and other things. I don't know that there's a lot of batteries right now providing capacity, and I think that's probably a change to the RA program that will account for battery-based capacity.
So what I'm asking is, what would it take, what would the price threshold and requirements have to be on batteries that are available to you for you to drop gas and switch to batteries?
You know, I see the economics of batteries. If they get a capacity payment, that makes them more economic. At the moment, they wouldn't get anything that's different from what generators would get. I think, you know, to the extent that they can make money by charging those batteries during times where the electricity price is low and then discharging it at high prices, that's the other source of revenue. But right now, there isn't a separate mechanism for capacity payments to batteries that isn't just part of the regular compliance requirement. I don't know if that really answers the question.
We didn't bring you here to ask all those. Are there any other questions of the board about resource adequacy that we can pose to Jay?
Just for the resource adequacy that we are procuring, how much of it is gas versus renewables?
I think the vast majority is coming from gas for resource adequacy. And you know, renewables have some limitations around their ability to sell resource adequacy because of just resources. So solar typically doesn't have a lot of resource adequacy that they can sell in Q4 and Q1. And the way that they determine resource adequacy is that it's the generation contribution during the peak 4 hours of that month. And they define, I guess, so with solar, because it's the lower daylight hours in those sort of shoulder months, it doesn't contribute enough to the peak demand period. You get a lot of resource adequacy to sell. So.
And to be specific, in the two contracts that we are looking at today, we'll be looking at today, one of them is based on hydro plant and one of them is based on gas turbine.
Right. Yeah, so the CAISO releases a net qualifying capacity list, and it'll list every unit that qualifies for capacity, and then by month how much it has to sell. So they determine what those values are. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so we have, so we wanted to talk a little bit about resource adequacy because we, as you can see from this presentation, that we're going to be buying it all the time. So we just wanted you to be more comfortable knowing what it was and that you'll be seeing these contracts come through on a regular basis. So
I might just interject there.
Yes.
That's one thing that is just to reemphasize that you have to apparently buy this like all the time, and so we're going to have to give some thought to how to deal with that as a board. So because this is the third transaction already, because there was one done in July, and there's two here, and it looks to me like we'll be doing just dozens and dozens and dozens of these transactions. So we're going to give some thought and probably bounce off the executive committee about the best way of kind of having the board involved, but without making it tedious.
And without giving you a 200-page agreement each time.
So the resource adequacy that we bought from Direct Energy, was that the yearly resource adequacy?
The resource adequacy that we bought from Direct covers calendar year 2016. So we're starting up, or it covers October, November, December of 2016, and also a portion of calendar year 2017. So the CPUC and the CEC make calculations all the time, and we just recently got, or a few weeks ago, we got a new calculation as to how much we needed to buy. So that's why we went out and bought more. We will have to buy more again once the rest of our load comes on for phase 2. So the resource adequacy agreements that we're bringing to you tonight are still just for the phase 1 energy for calendar year 2017 to meet the rest of our requirements. But again, it may change as calculations are redone by the regulatory agencies. So we've already purchased a couple $1 million worth of RA from Direct for that covered calendar year 2017 only. And what we're recommending tonight is approval of these two agreements, one with Shell for about $644,000 of RA, and one with Silicon Valley Power for $552,000 worth of RA. And so that's what we have before you. So I don't know how you want to.
Yeah, I mean,
it's back over to you on how you want to handle this.
Earlier this afternoon we were talking through, how much of this RA we need to buy as like a percentage of our underlying energy needs, and then we wanted to talk to the board a little bit about how you went out and sourced this.
Okay. So it turns out the RA is about, of the overall costs that overall dollars that we spend for energy procurement or power supplies, the RA is about 6.6 to 6.5% of the total power procurement that we need to do. So it's a relatively small percentage, but it is, 6%. And what we did is when we negotiated those first 3 agreements with our ESPs, with Direct, Constellation, and Shell, you may recall that we signed master agreements with all 3 of those so that we could have the ability to get bids from them for other products. So we did go out to those 3 and ask them for some bids for the resource adequacy, and Shell came back with the best price for the one product. At the same time, PEA saw that Silicon Valley Power was outselling resource adequacy as well. So we decided to put out a lowball bid for their resource adequacy. That's where I used to work, and I thought, well, why not? And we put 2 bids out. They accepted one of them, and the other one was higher than Shell, so we didn't buy the other product from them. So that's why we have 2 agreements here. One is for a portion of it from SVP because they provided the best price for that one type of resource adequacy, and then from Shell because they provided the best price for the other type of resource adequacy that we needed.
So, Yeah, I'll make one more comment, then we should take some questions. So when we purchased energy from Direct in June, the value of that contract, I'm sure Direct Energy knows it to the cent, was 222? I'll call it 220, make the math easy. So, 5% of 220 is 11. Right. So, we're talking about $11 million of RA purchase, in connection with that first tranche. So we're going to buy more RA when we do the much bigger purchase for the April launch. And this is a very technical area, and I can't, there's these regulatory requirements, I guess, that require you to spread this out somehow. And we can't just buy it all at once. We weren't able to just go buy $11 million worth of RA and be done with it. Maybe you could try to explain again why we can't do it that way, but there's there's going to be multiple purchases just to meet this obligation for the initial tranche of energy.
You could buy it all at once, but because the regulatory agencies are continually modifying the actual amount that we need to buy and the amount that we need to demonstrate that we have, if we bought all of it and then it turned out what we over purchased, then we would have to sell it back. And in fact, that did happen with Direct. We over purchased one type of resource adequacy, so they graciously bought back some of what they had sold to us for this one type of resource adequacy. So as you noticed here, we have to do month-ahead filings. So like every 45 days, we have to show that we have complied for the month coming up 45 days later. But the target that we're meeting is continually being modified. So it's like a moving target. So that's why we're kind of in the market continually. We're trying to, we're working with PEA to try to estimate exactly what the amount is. But because we also don't know exactly what our load is, and actually because our load is higher than what we had projected 15% opt-out. We have a very low opt-out, so we need to buy more because we're serving more load. So as we get more accurate data on what our actual load is, then we need to adjust our RA purchases to meet that.
I think Daniel had a question.
In terms of attributes that we consider, I'm sure it sounds like for the provider of resource adequacy, I'm sure the strength of the provider as a company, price, is sort of green attributes a part of what we ask for in an RFP, whether that in this case would come from battery storage if renewables aren't as useful in this context, or is that not one of the criteria for this particular power purchase?
That's not really the criteria for this. We're actually looking for just the least expensive, and it's typically gas-fired power plants or hydro plants or their base load type power plants that can provide the resource adequacy, because it's basically insurance for the California ISO that there's sufficient generation there if there was a big outage, or there's a really hot day hits the whole state and all of a sudden the demand spikes way up. They want to make sure that there are resources there that they can turn on so that people get their power. So eventually, many years down the road when batteries are economically competitive with gas-fired generation, then batteries could provide RA. We could sign up for RA from batteries, but it would not, I can assure you, it would not be at a rate of 6% of our energy costs. It would be way, way higher. So right now we're, that's really what's in the market. And it's not a liquid market, so you have to go bilaterally to these different companies and say, what's your price? What's your price? What's your price? It's not an active market where there's a lot of price discovery.
If I could just add to that, to connect RA to green attributes, if you look at other, like Germany, for example, who is probably the world leader in incorporating green energy into their grid, a lot of their backup, one of the ways they do that is through something comparable to this, which is, and almost all that backup is actually flexible coal and even some flexible nuclear. And so it's not a green attribute itself, but it's enabling a much greener grid if it's done properly. It's just one of the mechanisms for making sure that when we have lots of solar, we have capacity on hand for those days of sun, that when the clouds come in or the wind stops blowing or any of those events. So
pretty.
Yeah, I have a few questions, and I didn't want to take too much time, and actually I mentioned one of my questions to Jan already cleared up. But before I go into my questions, I wanted to point out that it's a very complex concept.
Yes.
And also, I think in order for us as a board to be able to appreciate and provide guidance in this process, we'll have to go through certain cycles before we all appreciate the intricacies, which professionals like Jan and George, and they all know about it. But I think in order for us to fill our role as a board of PCEA, I think we'll need some time to accommodate, to understand. But basically, the concept is average power versus peak power, maximum demand. Just like if you have one tank of water on the top of your house, you can run and enough water for all the 4 showers, but if you run all 4 of them together, it may not be enough. Depending on the pipelines, you may not be getting enough water. So in order to make sure that there's enough at any point in time for energy that we have already bought from clean sources, but there's enough variation in those clean sources, like if it's wind or solar, there might be cloudy days, et cetera, that we don't run out of electricity. It's not that we are buying electricity from those gas turbines, because we pay them back by later on when we have extra power. But we are not left without any power. To make that assurance, we buy this RA. Also, as more and more of the renewables become bigger part of the total electricity picture, the uncertainty goes even higher.
Yeah,
So it
right.
makes it very critical to have that capacity also in our hip pocket, besides energy, the electrons that we have already bought from clean sources. My question was basically a number of questions, but they are pertaining to the 2 contracts that I read. One is why do we have two type of contracts here? One is WSCC contract, the other one is EEI format. Because when we went through the first direct energy contract, at that time, we were told that we'll have the EEI format contracts, master agreements with all the suppliers, and we'll be able to get all our needs through them. So why did we have to go into WSCC and not use our EEI format?
Okay. I mean, I can answer if you want to add more. So when we talked to SVP and about purchasing the RA from them, the contract that they were using was the WSPP. We asked if we could use the EEI, and they said they're using the WSPP, which stands for Western States Power Pool. And it's a standard contract. It's actually very similar to the EEI contract. We had our attorneys read them, and it's just what they use. And the confirmation, if you looked at it, is pretty similar. So that was the one that they were willing to use, and we looked at it, and it seemed, comparable to what we had. So that's what we used. So we can also join the WSPP if you go on their website. There's like a few hundred power producers that are members of the WSPP, and the main product that the WSPP offers is the standard contract. And if you're a member, then you use it. We actually don't have to become a member to use it. According to SVP, they're willing to sign this contract with us not being a member, but because they're a member, that's what they use.
Jan, in the contract on WSPP, and perhaps David can also respond to that, I saw some references to FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC being the oversight body which looks at WSPP type of contracts. So are we signing anything under FERC, the federal government, with that contract, or we are outside that?
Honestly, I don't believe so, but I'd have to do I need to look at that, but no, I don't believe so. I don't know, I'd have to look at exactly what you're referring to. The reason that we used this contract, and we told you before we were signing 3 EEI masters, was to make it more flexible to enter into agreements with those 3 providers. Obviously, SVP was not one of those providers, and we would have had to do one of 2 things. We would have had to negotiate an EEI master with SVP, or we could use this agreement, which is a form agreement which doesn't require negotiation. So it was actually a benefit to us to use this other agreement. My understanding, and Jan has more experience with this than I do, is that the WSPP is a less complicated agreement for less complicated arrangements that tend to be shorter term, like this one, whereas the EEI is more complex, is more flexible for more complex and longer term agreements, like, not that the ones that we signed with Direct was particularly long term, but for longer term agreements. But no, I don't believe that we're subjecting ourselves to FERC regulatory control by using that agreement.
Okay, that's the only thing I wanted to make sure, that we are not getting ourselves into another master who will be looking at us. No, okay. The other question I had was, which is also in the spirit of regulatory style in California, but it seems like all our RA requirements are being calculated not by us, but by CAISO. They are the ones who estimate our monthly RA requirements. They are the ones who estimate our yearly requirements, which PUC agrees upon. And we have no inputs into that process, the way I understand it. And I thought that was kind of unfair, because we are paying for it as PCEA, but the numbers under which those requirements are set are done by CAISO and PG&E in combination with some PUC oversight. So I wanted to kind of look into it a little bit more carefully on whether that's the way we want it to continue in the future, or we want to take a little bit more control, or at least a review of those numbers before they become finalized by either CAISO or by PG&E or by PUC, because we end up paying for it. If they are in excess to what we need, we'll have to do the selling back, like you said, Jan. So I want to make sure that if we are responsible for paying, we should be also responsible to fix the number.
Right, and in fact, tomorrow morning we have a phone call with PG&E and PEA to review the RA numbers. So we have to provide load forecasts to the California Energy Commission and to the PUC, and based on that and our megawatts of load, you know, our responsibility as a load serving entity is to provide this 15% resource adequacy buffer. Anyone who is in the market has to do that, because we have to provide our share of basically the insurance that there's enough there. So it's based on our numbers that we originally provided, but we'll talk to them more tomorrow to see if, you know, how they came up with it and if they've made any modifications and why.
Thank you. And also I would make a suggestion that since we are joining hands with many other CCAs through CalCCA organization, this question about RA purchase as a group could give us a little bit more leverage, because since all of us have to do all those things PUC requires us to do, all of us are doing in the same way. Why do we have to do bilateral small amounts with small amounts? We can combine it together in a fair way and see if that is better handled that way, just dividing the costs among ourselves. So just an idea which we could discuss later.
Well, I want to second that. I think that's a very smart comment. We're in the market right now for October and soon April, and then we'll be going forward. We know Silicon Valley is about to go into the market beginning in April. I think it's a smart idea to think about if there's any value to us in terms of a bulk purchase, particularly as something like RA.
Thank you.
Now, CalCCA, right, this is, I mean, their first imperative is to work on the regulatory matters, but I believe that this is on their agenda to think through as well, joint procurement.
Yeah, and we're in constant discussion with the other CCAs. George just had breakfast with his counterpart at Marin yesterday, so we all talk to each other all the time and make sure that we're all working together. But certainly, if there's the ability for us to, get discounts because we're buying in bulk, as it were, I think we're all in favor of that.
So just, Section 13.1 specifically provides that nothing contained in this agreement or any confirmation shall give FERC jurisdiction over those parties not otherwise subject to such jurisdiction or be construed as a grant of jurisdiction over any party.
Well, just to close out this idea of, joint efforts, is it fair to say that it might be easier sledding with the RA than it would be with the direct power purchase to potentially work with it?
We can look at both of those. I mean, we want, when I was at Silicon Valley Power, we joined with other municipal utilities and had an agency called NCPA where we built power plants together because we didn't need all of the power from just ourselves, but working together as a joint powers agency, we could have some have the ability to save money and build a plant together. So certainly that's something that I'm sure the CCA community will want to do. We're just starting, and but we are definitely thinking about all these things, and appreciate you keeping us on our toes and reminding us to keep that on the top of the list.
And as I mentioned before, we're going to give some thought to, how to best review, and best engage the board in these complex matters. Pradeep, I could use your thoughts on that. Would be very helpful. We do have a speaker on this item, and I don't want to forget that. So, Michael Clausen, would you like to speak? And Ann Schneider wants to speak as well.
Good evening. Hi, this is Michael Clausen, and I've been a long time big fan of Peninsula Clean Energy, and I'm here to encourage you to think twice before doing business with Shell Energy North America. I guess sounds like already you have a contract with them, which I hadn't realized, but they're a tainted company. In April 2016, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commissioner judge determined that Shell Energy North America engaged in fraud and market manipulation during the California energy crisis of 2001. Shell Energy defrauded California ratepayers by overcharging them $779 million. CPUC Commissioner Mike Florio likened the fraud perpetrated by Shell Energy to that perpetrated by Enron. I think it's a real problem with us doing business with a tainted company. I don't think that Peninsula Clean Energy should serve as a vehicle for San Mateo County ratepayers filling the coffers of a company found guilty of corrupt practices. We are a young, brand new company. Reputation is very important, and we could be well tainted by dealing with Shell Energy. Clean Power San Francisco did its due diligence and decided not to do business with Shell. So, I'm a big fan of Peninsula Clean Energy, but I think that we're making a mistake dealing with Shell Energy North America.
Thanks for your comments. I know it's important that that issue be raised with this group. I'm sure most, if not all of us, were thinking about that when we saw Shell Energy listed. We'll come back to that in a minute, but I'd like to hear Ann Schneider's.
Ann Schneider, Councilwoman, City of Millbrae, alternate to PCE Board. Without going into Shell, which I actually also share the same concerns and I no longer use Shell, I didn't quite realize that we would have to be buying natural gas in one form or another. And I'm not even sure if there is a good source of natural gas. And I heard that green criteria wasn't something used. Me personally, I opted for 100%. I'm willing to pay a little bit more to have the best of the natural gas as opposed to the worst. So I think that that's something that we should come back and discuss. What is the best or worst of natural gas? Is it fracking in Aromas in Santa Clara County? Is it fracking out in the valley? Is it fracking in Oklahoma? Are we contributing to power plants that are in an environmental justice community? All of those things are important to me, and I'm willing to pay more to not be a party of affecting an environmentally justice community that tends to have a lot of these power plants sited in them. So if we've got to do this to be able to be up and running in October, okay, but I think we should come back and rethink this and look at the green criteria and be very, very transparent in what our green criteria is in choosing these companies. Companies with bad track records, I'm concerned. I would also like to think that maybe we save, as we start growing in our money, we start looking for bio sources, bio natural gas. And that might be a company that we might want to invest in, whether it's algae or some other consistent source of biological natural gases, that's something that we consider. I don't think that's a short-term solution, but it could be a long-term solution. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. So I think we should turn back to the Shell issue. I mean, Jan, do you want to start with any of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I just want to kind of differentiate what it is we're actually buying. So there's energy, which is what we bought from direct energy, which is kilowatt hours, and that is the green energy that we're buying. That is the greenhouse gas free energy, and then a portion of that is probably going to be system energy, which is unspecified energy that we're getting from the grid, and some of that may be natural gas fired. The resource adequacy that we're buying is the capacity. It's the kilowatts of or megawatts of power plants that are on standby to operate if there's greater demand for power than what was forecast or what was scheduled, or if there's an outage because a transmission line goes down or a tree knocks down a transmission line and the power goes out. People don't like to have their power go out, so you have these power plants on standby to start. So we're not buying natural gas through this RA purchase. We're providing part of the insurance package of having power plants available to back up the grid if there's an outage or if the wind stops blowing or the sun is covered by clouds. So I just wanted to note that.
One quick question, Jen. So we talked earlier about 15% extra capacity. So I don't know if I'm framing this question correctly, but you know, if you 5 years from now, if you look back, you know, how much of that 15% would have actually been utilized? I mean, because we're not. I mean, do you have a sense for that?
I mean, it's only utilized if there's an outage or if like the flexible capacity is there, because if you look at the actual output of a solar plant, it's kind of like this during the day because clouds come over the solar field or you know, one of the panels goes out or something like that. So it's not constant, and if it's going like this, then you need to have some other power plants that can also go like this to even it out so that it ends up being like this to meet what the load is. So this is capacity. We're buying kilowatts as opposed to kilowatt hours, or we're funding kilowatt payments to these generators so that they will stay in business and stay on standby in case they are needed, but they're not. Unless something unexpected happens, they probably are not going to be operating, or they would be operating very few hours of the year.
John.
Jen, can I augment your answer for Supervisor Daypine? When I was working for Southern California Edison Company, like George was working, there was times when the summer in Southern California was extra hot.
Yep.
And our 15% margin of the total system was reduced to 3.5%. It came so close that it kept quite a few executive sleepless nights. So it came so close that, and we did not know whether temperature will keep on going up because of the Santa Ana conditions in those days. So 15% has been estimated based on the cost effectiveness. Basically, it's a knee curve. As you have more spare capacity, more insurance you have, but it comes at a cost. So at 15%, they have found out by experience it's the optimum where that's the best trade-off.
John, you had a question?
Yeah. So the plants that providers use for resource adequacy, since they don't come online very often, do they tend to be the less efficient gas plants or the more efficient gas plants? I seem to recall when we interviewed the power producers that at least one or two of them were very proud of the efficiency of their gas plants that they used for normal production. So.
Yeah, they're typically the less efficient ones. So the contract we have here with Shell, the power plant that they're offering for the resource adequacy is actually a hydro plant. It's the Colgate Hydro Unit 2 in Yuba City. And the plants that Silicon Valley Power are offering are two combustion turbines located in Alameda. And those combustion turbines are rarely used, but they're there on standby in case they're needed. So that's what we're buying here. One is hydro and one is natural gas-fired combustion turbine. So, and we did,
So I did want to, we went a little bit sideways. We were, the issue that had been flagged for us was in which we're all well aware of, is the Shell issue. And I know board members may want to comment. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, I want to comment because I hear the concerns that Michael brought up and that Ann brought up, and I'm very concerned because I think there's a double standard here. If somebody had stolen from the people of California $70 million, just 1/10, stole it from an armored truck, let's say, they'd still be in jail. And I'm pretty sure we would all agree that that's where they belong. On the other hand, these guys, they wore a suit, they stole the money through fraud. While we weren't looking or paying attention, they figured out a way to get away with it. But they were finally caught, and yet nobody went to jail. And I don't know what kind of punishment may have been meted out for this, but I would venture to say it was probably inadequate. So to me, that's a double standard. And also, I agree with Ann on the issue of environmental justice. I know that in the Central Valley, in the city of Shafter, which is outside of Fresno, there are fracking rigs right next to public schools. There are certain communities that suffer disproportionately from the use of this kind of product. And I don't think we should support it because what is our goal after all? What are we trying to do? And I think it's inconsistent with our goal. And so, I mean, like Ann said, if we have to do that now to get over a certain threshold and get us where we've got to be, so be it. But in the future, I think we really need to look very closely at this. Thank you.
Yes, Kat.
So, kind of playing devil's advocate. So if we sit around the table and we say, yep, we agree, Shell's bad, we don't want to support them, what then? I mean, if we did say that we don't want to do this, what is the next step? Is there an alternative? What is the impact of making that decision?
So, because I anticipated there might be some questions like that. The reason we picked Shell is because we were able to save money going with them rather than SVP because we could have bought this from SVP. So we were able to save about $20,000 purchasing from Shell as opposed to SVP. So I checked with Silicon Valley Power today to see if we could buy it from them if they still had it available. They have it available for 7 of the 12 months that we need, so we could go back to them and get a portion of it from them. We could also go to our other suppliers, to Direct Energy and Constellation, and ask them again for a price for the product that we're getting from Shell, and see what they would offer. So, we made the decision based on price. If you want us to make the decision based on other factors, then we're happy to do that.
Jeff.
What is the impact of 20,000? You say, just make sure I understand you. So you're saying it's $20,000 plus to fill the gap.
Well, the agreement that we are putting before you today is an agreement for $644,000 of RA purchases from Shell for calendar year 2017. So it would probably be more like $670 if we went with someone else to cover that. So that's the difference in cost. It's not a lot, but we're trying to run the organization as efficiently and cost effectively as we can. But it's not hugely significant amount of money.
Jeff.
Just two thoughts about, to follow on what Kat said. First of all, yes, Shell did engage in some bad business practices in 2001. They were also contracted by both MCE and Sonoma Clean Power more recently, who've both spoken very highly of them as a business partner, for what that's worth. And also, as far as, I mean, we can all sit here and agree that what happened in 2001 was wrong. But you have to have a standard. In other words, you could probably go to any company we go to and say, well, they did this in 2007, or this in 2011, or this in 2004, and that was wrong too. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't exclude them, but if we're going to exclude, we better start having a standard for it. And I'm not sure we want to just start meting it out, on one-offs like this, or if we want to step back at some point and have a more comprehensive policy discussion about it. That's my thought on that.
I think Supervisor Groom.
Thanks, Dave. When we interviewed the Shell people when we were making the first purchase, the gentleman who was leading the team, I think his name was Mr. Pierce, he said that all of the people on the Shell team were not with the company in 2000 in that period of time, and that and I'm just reading their website now, and their president's name is Marvin Odom. He was not the president in 2001, so it looks like there's a new management team, and during our interview process, they interviewed quite well, and they presented well. So I think it might be a new management team, and it certainly is people that we're dealing with that were not with Shell when those things occurred.
Donna.
Yeah, I just kind of want to echo Jeff, just having, whether it's, investing in your pension fund or investing in, different things. If you're going to be exclusionary, you need a policy. It has to be a policy. And it needs to be, fairly specific and consistently applied. Otherwise, I think we will get in trouble down the road. As an it's just not good business practice. So I think if we do want to do it, I would prefer we step back, write or figure out a policy, and then, evaluate this organization and see if they meet it or don't meet it, and then exclude or include them based on that. Like it might be within 3 years they did something, or, the current management team is still the same. There just needs to be some criteria established and a policy set. And I have no problem doing that, and I'd be happy to work on it. But I feel very uncomfortable doing a one-off.
Wayne.
Is there a time constraint?
Yeah.
I'd have to ask PEA. I'm thinking that maybe we can, if you don't want to move forward on that agreement tonight, that we could hold off and bring back a different one to you, or I can find out what the timing is, and if there is a time constraint, then we could have you could either, well, yeah, I don't know. I guess that's the answer. I think we might have a little bit of flexibility with that. As you saw in the slides, we need to show for the January 2017 compliance, we have to file by October 31st, the year ahead filing for compliance year 2017, and then on November 17th, we have to show that we comply with January. So it appears to me that we maybe can wait a month, and as long as we have made a decision by October 31st as to who we're going to purchase it from. So it looks like we have a month and a half to do that compliance filing.
And I think that, I think it's really a philosophical issue that I don't think we need any more information to decide. I mean, we know that, Shell did terrible things in 2001, 15 years ago. And we know companies do bad things all the time. I mean, Wells Fargo just engaged in terrible acts, and I'm a Wells Fargo, customer. I imagine many people here are, right?
multiple accounts there.
6.4.
Right, so, you know, it's the philosophical question is, when do you penalize a company with your pocketbook? You know, in this instance, you know, this is a wrongdoing that happened 15 years ago. You know, we know them through reputation, through MCE. We've met them. You know, I might feel differently if this was 2004, but I am supportive of going with Shell, given that how much time has passed and the fact that we have credible references for them. But reasonable people can disagree on this, so I don't think we need more information. I think we ought to make a choice in what direction we want to take with this. Wayne.
I think Jeff and Donna gave some excellent suggestions, and I think we should move forward on those suggestions. But I feel very comfortable with staff and our leadership's judgment on this matter. So I actually like to move that we accept Shell as RA. Is that where we're going now?
I do think that we should take action on it, and then there's kind of a secondary question of whether we give direction to staff and the executive committee to think about whether we want to adopt any policies in this area, which is a tricky thing to do. I'm not 100% sure how fruitful that would be.
That's why I'm suggesting we move on that on a different track.
Yeah.
Not make it tonight.
Right.
Yeah,
not, Right.
So
right.
That's why I want.
Kat.
I just had a clarification question. How long is the contract for? Is it
1 year.
in 30 days notice, or is it year by year? Or so if things aren't going well, or if we find someone that we feel more comfortable with, how locked in are we in this?
This purchase is for calendar year 2017.
Okay, so it would be reviewed again next year, or?
We'll be out buying more every month.
Yeah, that's the thing is that, you know, we're going to be buying this RA a lot, and it's has been pointed out, you know, it's a kind of this bilateral market, and there may be other times where Shell has, in that particular environment, has the best deal. They're short-term contracts. You know, each one is relatively small. I mean, remind me again the total on this one.
600,000.
Right. So that's, you know, we said we need 11 million of this just for the first contract. So this is, but I don't think that really is terribly relevant. I mean, if the board feels that we just shouldn't do business with Shell, it doesn't matter if it's $10 or $100 million. You know, it really gets to this philosophical question of whether we feel strongly enough that we're just not going to do business with them. And I don't feel that way myself.
I was just wondering how locked in we are once we decide to do business.
Well, I would suspect that we wouldn't interrupt that 1 year contract.
No, but I'm
right.
saying.
But then we'll be constantly entering into these transactions.
Okay.
Rick and then Pradeep.
So just quickly, I want to say, even if we decide to set some limits around how far back criminal activity may have been, or what level, the criminal activity might rise to, I still would have a problem with the product itself and how it's produced.
That's a different question.
And so we would, yeah, right.
Yeah.
But
This is hydrogen.
it's
hydro.
natural gas.
No, this is hydro.
No, this is
hydro. This one's
Oh, we're talking about the hydro now? Okay.
Shell's hydro, the other one's still chemical.
Oh, okay. Well,
you're raising a
Hold
more
on.
complex question about
fracking.
well, resource adequacy, as we've heard, is not a direct procurement. It's capacity, but some of that capacity comes from gas, and then you're asking, well, if that capacity is needed, what gas is being turned on, and
I think even before that, though, if we enter this contract, then that method of producing that product continues to go on, and we're enabling that. Okay, they keep drilling, they keep pumping, so we have to think about that.
Yeah, I think it's a separate. We should think about it. I think it's separate from this kind of this focus Shell issue. Okay. Other comments?
Yeah, I would like to separate this discussion into two components. I think they're both strong and very important. One is the philosophy of dealing with a company that has been bad in the past
Right.
for some reason or the other.
They were very bad.
Yeah, very bad. And the other one is the corporation in terms of minimizing its costs in the most efficient way, and how that practice should be impacted by the first consideration.
Right. That's the trade-off.
That's a trade-off. So what I like to do, if possible, Jan, to see the difference in our corporate expense if we went from Shell to number 2 or next higher bidder out of those other two, Direct Energy and the third one, I don't remember the name right now. So that would be the cost of meeting the philosophy of not working with someone like Shell to the corporation. We can discuss whether that is worth that much extra expenditure. That will be an explicit expenditure just to meet that requirement of not working with Shell, period. But I do want to, again, address Donna's point and also Jeff's point, that in the future, we will be dealing with these and other companies in many, many ways. PCE business will be continually growing, actually. And there will be new discoveries in the paper. Today's Wells Fargo, or it could be some other company next year. So we got to have some consistent criteria on which to measure our responses to those new information coming in. And I think it would take some thoughtful discussion of this board to make these policies, because that will definitely impact the bottom line in terms of how fast our capital investment projects will be coming in, how much money we want to spend on these other principles, if you will. So I'd like to have that discussion taking place in a more, in a much more elaborate way. But at this time, since we have October 31st as the deadline to make our operation for 2017 feasible, we got to just look at what we have right now, Shell versus next alternative, which can be done before October 31st, and see how much cost it implies. So some of the people who talked about Shell and its previous misdeeds, I also want to say that many of these things are very well regulated now. It's not only us we learned how Shell did, what they did, but also regulatory environment learned what was wrong with the market loopholes that were exploited by those people. And many of those loopholes have been closed since then by regulatory commissions and regulatory constraints. So I don't think that today's environment is same as 2001, even if the Shell was the same company. But on the other hand, I don't want to encourage that kind of behavior from any company, not only Shell. So I would like to send a message that we want to honor good companies, solid companies. But I'd like to know how much cost it would be to PCEA to make that honor as a criteria. So I would suggest that we have our discussion, but at the same time, we have this particular filing of October 31st dealt with in a short time based on how much more it'll cost us to go, second option.
I guess, ask Jan again, I mean, don't we have a decent estimate of that cost, or at least order of magnitude? Yeah. You said 20,000 before. Let's say it's 50,000. I mean, it's...
Yeah, you know, the prices change all the time. And since Direct Energy's in the room here, maybe they're willing to do a great deal with us tonight. So, yeah. So, you know, tomorrow we can make some calls and see what the prices are. Now, I think we have time if you want to wait to take action on this until next month.
Wayne.
For this one. If you want to, I don't know if you want to go forward on the SVP one or if you want to wait on both of them.
I have a motion on the floor if anybody else wants a second.
Yeah.
He has a motion on the floor.
We'll do a second.
All right, we should take these contracts one at a time. Why don't we dispose of the easy one here first? That's with Silicon Valley Power. So all in favor of approving the contract with Silicon Valley Power, please indicate by aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, abstentions? Okay, so moving to the Shell Energy. the only again, I'll make one last comment is, to me, it's it's just a very philosophical thing. Like whether it costs us, like if it's $10,000, it's going to cost us only $10,000 to shift to somebody else. So, oh, who cares, 10,000, or maybe it's 100,000. To me, it doesn't matter. I mean, to me, it's just a philosophical principle, So I don't. So with all due respect, I don't really feel I need to know the delta, because I just feel it's a very binary. Either you're maximizing the efficiency of our operation, or you're not, because in this case, this company is not someone we don't want to do business with. I just see it kind of a very philosophical decision. So I do think I'm comfortable voting on it. Go ahead.
I'm less worried about the delta on that. I'm more worried about voting Shell in particular down, and then coming back in future contracts and having this slippery slope where, well, any company that's coming up, what do we find out about them in the due diligence process? And now it's like, okay, well, you rejected Shell because they were unethical. We think this company is unethical, or we think this company is.
Well, right.
Again, I think I do agree with you. I think I'm okay with a vote on Shell right now, with that idea that the policy for future procurement be fleshed out to the extent it can be.
All right. Any other comments, Rick?
I just want to make sure I voted no.
We haven't voted on Shell yet, but I take it you're voting no.
I voted no.
You voted no on the SVP contract.
Oh, okay, on SVP.
Correct.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I missed that, Rick.
Yeah.
So could you repeat what we're voting on?
Yeah. So
do we have a motion for this, or was that part of your motion, Wayne?
Yeah, motion.
You moved on both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I bifurcated it because there's probably a different vote on this then. So we have these two resource adequacy contracts. The first with Silicon Valley Power that we just voted on with one dissenting vote from Rick Bonilla. So now we're going to take a vote on the proposed resource adequacy contract with Shell Energy. And we've heard some debate about whether that's something this.
So is the motion on the floor that we approve it?
Yes.
With caveat?
Yeah, there was, I think it's a little confusion because there wasn't a first and second on the first vote.
Yeah.
Which I'll take the motion for the first vote again.
And then Dave's your second. You're the motion.
There you go. Then that solves that problem, Carolyn. So now you get that on record. So
Thank you for fixing that.
Second one.
And the contract.
So why don't we restate the motion?
For 1 year.
I'm making a motion to accept Shell for.
It's only for 1 year.
What would we call it again? The adequacy?
Resource adequacy.
And Larry seconded, right? Larry? Yeah. We just need to take a vote.
Okay. Well, if there's any further discussion, anybody show of hands, all in favor of the proposal? Okay. And then those opposed? So let's make sure we capture those.
Great.
All right, very good. What did Rick? Your
comment?
Yes.
I think that there's two issues here. One has to do with what Jeff brought up, which is establishing a standard for who we're going to do business with. We're a new company. We're in a startup stage, and we don't have this level of policy that we've established. And I think it's appropriate for us to dive into that and assess it. And maybe that should be done by a subcommittee or by the executive committee, I'm not sure, but there needs to be some proposal that somebody takes leadership for to bring back to all of us as a board. I think that's a different issue from another very important issue, which is this whole issue with RA and what is required and where the resource can come from. This is what Rick pointed out. Maybe we don't have battery-generated potential RA right now, but maybe we can find that, or maybe we can do something that can provide an RA solution that will be more to our benefit. And we talked about this a little bit on the executive committee this week, but I think this is a big subject. We're going to be buying this product in the market every month.
Yeah.
And while it may be, tens of thousands of dollars each time for a $200 million corporation, it's going to add up. I think it's appropriate that we establish a subcommittee to look into this, who gets to know it and does some inquiry and so that all the burden isn't on our staff, which is a pretty thin staff. I think we should help them out, and I think we should educate the board about it. And maybe we need to have somebody come in and give us some education on it or help, but I think it'd be better if we had a small group that kind of took it on, because I think it's a big issue. And we can cut some ground here, right? We've already cut some ground, and we know, I think that what Pradeep said earlier, you know, maybe we can aggregate some of our purchases. This whole CCA movement is a new movement. I think this is an appropriate area for us to take a look at.
I think you're raising, you know, two areas of further inquiry. One is the RA process generally.
That's right.
And I do think, you know, fortunately we have Pradeep, and there should be a subset of the board who really gets their head around it. And then there's the second inquiry of, you know, some kind of code of conduct for the type of companies we do business with.
Or type of product that gets purchased with regard to what's available on the marketplace, but at least directionally.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's, yeah, it is a code of, it's an ethical issue that we need to assess, and it may be what, you know, I mean, there's a big movement at Stanford to divest any fossil fuel holdings that they have.
The issue of the day.
And I'm not bringing that up for us, but I'm just saying there's an ethical issue. We should look into it. I think it's an appropriate thing for us to look at. I feel like we should do that. But I do feel that you're right. There's two issues, and there's more urgency around this RA because we're in the marketplace buying it, and we're going to be spending the money that this corporation has, which is essentially our customers' money.
Right.
So, do we just throw it to the executive committee then? Or should we put it in a subcommittee?
I think it'd be best to have some subcommittees, and we'll put out a call for some volunteers, so we can dig into both these issues.
So I just want to comment. I like what Rick said. For me, in terms of the product itself, it boils down, he said it's an ethical issue. And as long as there are, in the Central Valley, kids developing elevated rates of asthma in these towns where fracking is being performed, I can't support that. So that's why I have to draw the line.
And so the resource adequacy team will get their arms around that.
Okay. It's our mission, it's our goal, clean, renewable energy. So.
Just, I'm sorry, Dave, I just have a procedural question in terms of, is it common that the board is actually approving all these contracts individually, or do you sort of approve a policy and
well, that's one of the things we got to flesh out.
Yeah.
You know, we've made some inquiries with Marin and Sonoma, who've been doing this for a while, and I could foresee. I mean, I think we have two needs. One is we want to make sure we have enough sufficient expertise on the board so we meet our fiduciary obligations. And then we have to think through, what's the best way of presenting these to the board or adopting some policy to give guidance to the management. So both those issues have to be thought through. There was one other, Mark Roos also had a comment here.
Mark Roost, I'm representing Seawave Battery. My comment.
Speak up a little.
Can't hear you.
I can just speak. Okay, I can just speak up. Okay, so I'm representing Seawave Battery, which is a battery technology startup, which is somewhere between 6 and 12 months, we think, from having a battery that would solve the problem. Like $100 a kilowatt hour, 4,000 cycles, and no fire risk, no explosion risk. And some of the uses that if you take advantage of economies of scale to a degree, you could purchase it for you could reserve part of it for resource adequacy and use the rest for load shifting, intermittency mitigating, peat shaving, and ancillary services. And if you're going to have to buy this RA every year, every month of every year, otherwise, Well, if you buy batteries and you finance them one time, and if their levelized cost is lower than the cost per cycle that you're paying for with gas, then you've washed out that issue. You know, you can simply go with the economics, and the moral is in the same direction. And I think it's important to think about this idea of helping gas keep going. We are looking at a big tipping point, and so we think that within 12 months or 15 months, by the end of 17, we could be in production, and hopefully we can be talking about a whole lot of different things, including charging stations, you know, electric vehicles. We can do a whole conceptual transformation of energy use at all in San Mateo County and throughout the state.
Okay, thank you for your comments. We also have a card from Landis Martela, who eager to hear your perspective, Landis.
Yeah, I got here late tonight. I'm sorry. The ethical questions, and I know you already voted, but I would urge you to reconsider your decision about Shell Oil North America. The ethical questions regarding money, to me, are always a little easier than other moral questions. During the 2000-2001 energy crisis, LA Department of Water and Power cranked up the dirtiest coal plant they had that hadn't been used for decades because they could sell into the market and make money. It was inappropriate and unethical. Shell Oil does routine business in Nigeria. I haven't bought a gallon of Shell Oil in 30 years. What they do in Africa is deplorable, and their association with that government there is testable. So I would just urge everyone to think about it. Just go read a little bit about what Royal Dutch Shell does in Nigeria. And really, although it's going to cost us an extra 4% to pay a higher price for RA out of Silicon Valley, I really think you should really reconsider this and not do it. It's a mark on this organization to do any business with Shell Oil. And there's only two things I've done in my life. I didn't eat grapes for 15 years, and I haven't bought a gallon of Shell Oil in 30. I plan to never buy a gallon of Shell Oil, and I do not want to be associated with them in any way or any of their subsidiaries. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Okay, we have taken action. I think we're ready to move to our next agenda item.
And just for the record, and make Ms. Bartoletti's job a little easier, I just want to make sure that the two motions that were made were the two motions that are listed in the agenda as motions 3A and 3B.
Yes.
Thank you.
And what was the result of the voting?
I believe the first vote was 16 to 1, and the second vote was 13-3 and 1 abstention.
Oh.
I thought there were 17. I counted 17. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm there's 19. 1, 2. Wait, where's the PhD in math? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
No, PhDs can't count.
It's all about theory.
You want to do the vote again?
I get 19. So we actually need to report in the minutes, and we will, who actually voted no and who abstained, and I assume we have those.
I have that for SVP, which was B, that we had all in favor. Well, I'll get the numbers, but there was one who voted no for SVP. That was for vanilla. And then for the Shell vote, we had the yeses won, but those opposed were Penrose, Gupta, Vanilla, and one abstention, Yost. Is that correct? I'm sorry, there was another abstention? Or
I voted against.
you voted, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and then we'll assume all 19 are accounted for then. Everyone else voted yes if not indicated by Ann. Let's now move to the marketing outreach update.